Michael sat in the pub's corner, nursing his whiskey, as the rain outside cast silvery streaks on the windows. The place was dim, the warm glow of hanging lights barely cutting through the shadows. His mind was heavy with the weight of misfortune. Life hadn't been kind to Michael. His career in construction had derailed after a workplace injury left him with chronic pain and a severe limp. The settlement barely covered his medical bills, and if it hadn't been for the financial help of Danny, his younger brother, he'd have ended up living in a tent. He loved his brother, but couldn't help but resent his dependence on him. And though he took the money, it battered his pride every time he did. The few friends he'd had distanced themselves from him, tired of his ungrateful bitterness. And nights like these were routine. A drink to dull the ache, both physical and emotional. At the same time, strangers' chatter filled the emptiness around him. But on this evening, a bar conversation pierced through the haze.
I'm telling you, he solved all my problems.
A wiry man whispered, hunched over his drink, his rain-soaked jacket clinging to his lanky frame.
Yeah? And what did it cost you?
The bartender muttered. He had the look of someone who'd heard one too many drunken confessions. The wiry, thin man hesitated, his eyes darting to the side.
Not much,
he said, his voice wavering.
Just had to do some things, but everything I wanted I got. After my divorce and the car accident, I was ready to give up. But he showed me my future wasn't set, that I could change it.
The bartender snorted, shaking his head.
You're playing with fire, friend? You look for help from people like that and won't like what happens.
Michael's drink froze halfway to his mouth. He stared into the amber liquid, his distorted reflection rippling. A future that wasn't set, a solution to all his problems. The words resonated like a siren song calling to his desperation. The bartender's voice dropped lower.
That shaman, he's not normal. No one who goes to him ever ends up the same. Even the Indians give him a wide berth.
The wiry man shrugged, laughing nervously, the sound tinged with a hint of hysteria.
Well, everything has a price, right?
Michael tightened his grip on the glass. He had to know more. The forest smelled of damp earth and decay as Michael pushed through the undergrowth a few days later, guided by the vague directions the wiry man had scribbled on a napkin. The deeper he went into the shadowy Alaskan woods, the more the air seemed to press in around him. Twilight clung to the forest like a shroud, the towering trees blotting out the sun despite it being the height of summer. The hut appeared suddenly, hunched against the base of an ancient hemlock, its warped wooden walls and sagging roof seemingly as old as the tree. The only sign the place was inhabited was a thin wisp of smoke curled from a crude hole in the roof, carrying a sickly, sweet pungence that assaulted his nostrils even at a distance. The door creaked open at his knock, and the air was heavy with the scent of burnt herbs and incense inside. The ragged shaman sat cross-legged on the dirt floor, his back to Michael. But when he turned, his eyes gleamed, cold and old as the depths of his forest home.
You're looking for a way out,
the shaman said, his voice soft yet weighty.
a way to change your future.
Michael nodded, his throat dry. The shaman produced a yellowed piece of paper from his tattered jacket, its surface covered in a cramped script that seemed to shift under Michael's gaze.
These are the steps. As soon as you start, the path will unfold.
Michael hesitated.
What's the cost going to be?
The path won't be easy.
The man replied.
There'll be suffering, there'll be sacrifice, but in the end, you'll get everything you wanted.
The first task was simple. Leave a coin at a crossroads at midnight. Michael drove to the edge of Ketchikan, the road stretching into the void of the dark forest bordering his seaside home. The wind howled, carrying whispers that set his teeth on edge, but he placed the coin in the center of the crossroads. As he turned to leave, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision, tall, thin, and wrong. He spun around, but the road was empty. The second task was to burn a lock of his hair at the forest's edge. As the flames consumed the strands, he thought he heard an inhuman cry echoing from deep in the darkness, and the light cast by the fire didn't move as it ought to have. The third task was to draw a circle of salt around his bed and sleep within it. That night, his dreams twisted into nightmares. An endless forest path with trees that pulsed like veins, their slick bark alive with movement. A figure loomed in the distance, its footsteps heavy and wet. Michael awaited blessings, but instead, his life just unraveled faster. His car broke down on the highway, nearly causing a fatal accident. His landlord issued an eviction notice after claiming his last several rent checks had bounced, though Michael knew he'd paid them. His limp worsened, and the pain became unbearable, spreading to his chest and head no matter how many pills he took. Only his brother saved him, letting Michael crash in his basement and looking after him. As things got worse, the shadows grew strange. They stretched along the walls of his home at night, coalescing into shapes that felt too real. One night, as he lay in bed, the darkness at the corner of the basement unfolded into a tall, spindly figure. It didn't move, but its very presence was suffocating.
Why are you doing this to me?
Michael whispered, his voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, its limbs twitching unnaturally. Then it lunged. Michael screamed and flailed, but the figure was gone when he blinked. The salt circle around his bed was undisturbed, yet he'd felt the brush of cold claws on his chest. Michael tried to return to the shaman, but the path seemed to go nowhere. Desperate, he took a boat up to Metlakatla on the Annette Islands, searching for answers from the Alaskan natives. The locals avoided him and his questions, but just as he was about to give up, an older woman, her eyes as dark and bright as a raven's, finally took pity on him.
The witch man isn't of our people, but he's lived in these parts ever since the first white men came. They say he was chased here by the Russian church for devil worship. But whatever the truth is, the tasks he gave you were invitations.
Invitations? Invitations to what?
Michael asked.
To them things that he worships, them what followed him here from Siberia.
She replied.
They latch onto those who call. I know because when I was young, I went to see the witch man too.
Then you know how I can stop it?
He asked. The older woman nodded, and at last, Michael had his answer. That night, as soon as he returned to Ketchikan, he revisited the crossroads, leaving another coin. The shadows retreated, and his pain felt lighter. The very next evening, he again burned hair at the forest's edge, and for the first time in years, his pain disappeared, as did his limp. He felt strong, and that very week, he landed a great job, paying him more than he'd ever made before. Even his landlord admitted his mistake with the rent checks, making amends by fixing Michael's car and letting him move back in. Everything had turned around for Michael, and as the summer ended, he found himself sitting by the campfire, sharing a beer with Danny.
I'm glad to see you doing better,
Danny said, his tone kind and genuine, as it had always been despite the dark rings beneath his eyes.
You look like your old self again.
Michael forced a smile.
Yeah, things are better now, thanks to you. How about you, Danny? You okay?
Danny tried to put on a brave face, but Michael could see his brother was fast being eaten away.
I don't know. I keep having those hallucinations. Shadows that move when they shouldn't. And my dreams, they're awful. They're always awful. I keep going to the doctors, but nothing they give me puts a dent in it. I don't know how long I can last like this.
With genuine sympathy, Michael rested a firm hand on his brother's shoulder.
You looked after me.
He said, swallowing the knot in his throat.
So, I'll look after you.
In the end, the shaman had been right. There'd been suffering, and without a protective ring of salt around Danny's bed, there'd soon be a sacrifice. But in the end, Michael had gotten everything he wanted.
Like and subscribe for more horror and mystery stories.